Hello and welcome to Tax Matters. We are in November. The year 2022 is packing its bags. We'll begin the episode with sights and sounds from the 7th General Assembly of the African Tax Administration Forum, ATAF, which began on Monday the 31st of October and will end on Friday the 4th of November. Yes, Nigeria is playing host to top tax administrators from all over Africa. Chief host is the Executive Chairman FRS, Chairman Joint Tax Board, President Qatar, Muhammad Nami. The 7th General Assembly has as theme, Rethinking Revenue Strategies, the Human Face of Taxation. Next episode, we will begin sharing with you blow-by-blow accounts of the week-long events. Welcome once again. On this episode, we are continuing with our series on the tax obligations of a company or a company owner, and our guides are two gentlemen from both sides of the divide, one a tax consultant in private practice and the other a taxman. Today, we'll be bringing you the interview with the tax consultant. But before then, we have two public notices from the FIRS. The first public notice is on the appointment of source deduction agents for value-added tax, VAT. The FIRS by this notice is notifying members of the public, particularly persons carrying on business with MTN Nigeria Communications PLC and Airtel Networks Limited, that these companies have been appointed by the service as value-added tax source deduction agents. By virtue of this appointment, MTN Nigeria Communications PLC and Airtel Networks Limited have been mandated to deduct at source VAT on all related transactions with effect from 1st January 2023 and remit same to the Federal Inland Revenue Service in line with the provisions of the VAT Act. These companies, with effect from the date of commencement, will no longer be required to release VAT on invoices made to their vendors, service providers, suppliers, and persons who carry on businesses with them. Rather, they are required to deduct the VAT at source and remit same to FIRS. This will be in addition to the payment made to them on invoices issued by them to other parties. The second public notice is on real-time direct collection of taxes from online gaming transactions. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, in line with extant tax laws, hereby notifies the general public, particularly all companies engaged in online gaming activities, that the FIRS is automating the administration of tax on online gaming using Sentinel National Payment Gateway and electronic solution. Every operator offering online gaming services in Nigeria is required not later than 31st December 2022 to connect to the Sentinel National Payment Gateway, where taxes will be deducted from the online gaming transactions and remitted directly to the relevant government treasury. It is not mandatory for online gaming operators offering online gaming services from outside Nigeria to be incorporated in Nigeria. However, they must connect to the Sentinel National Payment Gateway for the purposes of deducting tax from gaming transactions of players in Nigeria and remit directly to the government. All companies engaged in online gaming activities are to take note of this notice for compliance. Now to our tax education corner. We want to continue our series on the tax obligations of a company, and our guest is a tax consultant, Mr. Bolaji Aliyu, who is going to take us through what it takes to file and pay taxes. Mr. Aliyu, thank you for joining us on Tax Matters.
It is my pleasure to be here.
We are looking at the tax obligations of a company owner or a company, if you like, and we want to begin at that point when the auditor puts together the books of the company. Now, in putting together the books of the company, what do you require from the company or the company owner?
Okay, at the point where the company is about preparing their financial statements, it is expected from the owners of the book to have his bank statements available, to have his cash book available. a sales ledger book. If there is a sales book, the owner needs that sales book to be available. If there is anything like fixed asset register where it lists out all his assets, all those assets needs to be available. Once the fixed assets, the cash book, the bank statement is available, the auditor is good to go from that point. And if there's any further question, clarification for the auditors to be able to prepare the financial statement, then the auditor can be asking further question from that point.
All right. Now, what happens when the company owner does not know what to do, like, or if he or she is not educated or well organized? How do you come in?
Okay, that situation is what we call in accounting, we call it incomplete record. Incomplete record is a decision where the owner of the books does not even keep proper records. But even if it doesn't keep proper records, there will be some few information that may be available on the book around for the auditors to work with, right? If the company is maintaining maybe a bank account of the company, the auditors will need that bank statements to be able to see all the inflows so that it can monitor all the sales of that company, all right? Then, irrespective, the company will have maybe certain book, maybe it's just a booklet that record all its sales, that record all its expenses. You just give it to the auditor. The auditor will work around those and ask for that question to be able to extract the information it needs to be able to prepare the financial statement. Most importantly, what the auditor needs is to know how much the total sales of the company. You want to know the total cost incurred by that company. You want to know the total expenses incurred apart from the costs that relate to the business. You want to see the assets. You want to know who and who is owing the company and who the company is owing. If those informations are available, the auditors is good to prepare the financial statements which the company can use in rendering their returns to the government.
So if there is no sales or no records pertaining to the expenses or some incomes, the bank statement can suffice? The
bank statement, in fact, that's one of the major documents that is needed for auditors to be able to prepare financial statement if no other information is readily available.
So what are the contents of a typical financial statement?
Okay, there is a standard that governs what and what should be in a financial statement. And this standard is called International Financial Reporting Standards. IAS 1, that is the first standard, number one standard in that booklet. It listed out those information that should be readily available in a typical financial statement. Number one, there should be what we call income statements, or we call a statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. This statement is going to show out all the sales of that company for that period, expenses for that period, and the profit the company made for that period. That is number one. There's going to be what is called statement of financial position. Statement of financial position is going to show all the assets and the liability and the remainings, which is the owner's part, which is called the equity. That will also be there in the financial statement. There's also what is called statement of cash flow. That statement of cash flow will tell us, okay, this is the total cash received by the company for that period and how those cash was spent and the remaining balance available to the owner of the business. And in the financial statement, we are going to see notes. That note is going to explain the contents in that financial statement. And then definitely there's going to be director's reports, comments, and there's going to be auditor's reports, and that will be signed by the auditor. So say this financial statement that you are holding is totally verified and it is certified by an auditor. Then the directors of the company will also need to do what? We also need to sign the account to say this account is actually prepared by. So for every financial statement, there will be statement of financial position, there will be statement of profit and loss, which is called income statement. There is going to be statements of cash flow, and there may be some comparative years figure in that financial statement. So for every financial statement, those information will be available there.
Still on this financial statement, now going through this financial statement, we came across terms like property, plant and equipment, investment properties, trade receivables, taxation, deferred terms, and a lot of others. And we've also seen administrative expenses. Do you want to explain some of these terms to our viewers?
All right, so for every financial statement, there is a portion that is called maybe the revenue, or we call it sales. That is the first line that we're going to see in a statement of profit or loss. That says is the total revenue generated by a company in a particular year, or the total sales of a company for a particular year, whether says whether the company has received the cash for it, whether that revenue, whether it has been paid for or not. That is the first line, because financial statement is prepared on an accurate basis. So you need to include those that have paid and those that have not paid. So that will be the number one line item. You are going to see in financial statement cost of sales. Cost of sales are those costs incurred by a company in generating the revenue for that year. Say, for instance, somebody that is into a supermarket. The cost of those items in a supermarket are cost of sales to that company. You will see cost of sales. In financial statement, you will also see what is called administrative expenses. So administrative expenses are those expenses incurred by the company in running that business. It is not directly to the revenue generated, but it is used like the salary of their staff, rents, cleaning, maintaining of the office. Those are administrative expenses. You are going to see it in there. And if you go to the statement of financial position, you will see PPE, like I said, property, plants, and equipment. Those are the assets of the company. Example, furniture and fittings, motor vehicle, plants and equipment. Then when we come to current assets in the financial, you will see trade receivables. So trade receivables are those part of the sales that the company has made sales in the year, but some people are yet to pay for it. So the total value of those that are yet to be paid is what is known as trade receivable. You will see trade payables. Trade payables are those expenses which the company has enjoyed, but they've not paid for it. So that one will also be trade payables. You will see taxation in there. Taxation is just that part of what it belongs to the government that the company needs to pay, whether the one they have paid or the one they need to pay or the one they will pay in future. Everything will be matched together, and it will be reported as taxation in the statement of financial position. We also see shareholders, or we call it capital. Capital is now that contribution by the owner of the business into that business at the beginning, and that will also be there. Then you can see in financial statements, you can see deferred tax. Deferred tax are, all obligations, present obligations of the company at the moment is a present obligation, but the tax that relates to that obligation is not due to be paid to the government at the moment. So it will be paid in the future. That is why it is called deferred. So you defer paying that tax because of one tax law or the other. You are going to pay it in the future, but not at the moment. So those are some terminologies that you see in financial statements.
Our guest has taken us through what the auditor requires from the company to enable the auditor put together the financial statement, and what to do when such records are not available or are inadequate. Now, what role does this financial statement play in filing for companies' income tax? That is this document that goes to the Federal Revenue Service, or is there another set of documents that is required?
Filing income tax with Federal Inland Revenue Service is actually governed by an act, and that act is called Company Income Tax Act 2004 as amended. Section 55, to be precise, of that Company Income Tax Act listed out documents that need to be submitted to FRS if you are to file your returns. One critical document is this audited financial statement. You need this audited financial statement. That is number one. But apart from this audited financial statement, you still need tax computations of that company. So you need tax computation, which will also be prepared. You need capital allowance computation. If the company has used any of its assets to generate the income, the company needs to claim that portion of that asset that was used to generate that income as part of their allowable cost. So you will see capital allowance computation. From that computation, from income tax computation, for capital allowance computation, then you are going to arrive at tax that is due to the government at that particular point in time. The tax due, then the evidence of payment of that tax that is due to the government, you also need to put that evidence, whether the company needs to pay by cash or the company is using credit notes to pay for that income tax, all those needs to be there. So it's not only financial statements. These are some of those documents that also need to be added and filed with Federal Inland Revenue if you are filing your returns.
So who prepares all these documents? Is it still the auditor?
In this part of the world, people are mixing so many things together. Once you are a professional accountant, you believe okay, you can audit, you can also do tax, all right? It's not the job of an auditor to prepare or to advise what tax is to be paid. Although the auditor will put the figure, we input that figure, that tax will be inputted in the financial statement. It will be inputted. However, you need a tax advisor or a tax consultant that's going to pick that financial statement prepared by the auditor and will now do the computation and determine what tax needs to be paid. So it is tax advisor or the tax consultant that needs to compute tax payable, not an auditor. Although now everybody, once you're a professional accountant, you believe you can do that, but it goes beyond just doing computation because you've passed tax when you are doing ICANN or ACC or whatever. You believe, no, it is totally different. So it's a tax advisor or a tax consultant that should determine how much is the tax that needs to be paid and file this with Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. You really appreciate your time.
Yeah, welcome.
There you are. You have heard from the perspective of a tax practitioner in private practice, that is, that professional who represents the company before the tax authorities. To take the discussion further, we have spoken to a tax collector. Mr. Sadiq Abubakar Mohammed is the State Coordinator, Lagos Mainland East at the FIRS. Mr. Mohammed will take us through the tax obligations of a company from the perspective of the taxman. But that will be on the second installment of this series. We move on. Now you know what you need to do to perform your role as a good corporate citizen. The good news is that tax compliance is no longer a chore, rather it is now easier than ABC with the introduction of TAXPRO-MAX. TAXPRO-MAX is one of the various reforms ongoing at the FIRS under the able leadership of Muhammad Nami. Mrs. Chaka Ben Obi is the Group Lead, Digital and Innovation Support Group at the FIRS. Mrs. Ben Obi supervises TAXPRO-MAX operations.
I'm a very busy man. My business involves a lot of traveling and I interface with lots and lots of people and organizations. Tax compliance used to be a big drag on my business. It was time consuming and very costly. But now, no more. Introducing the FIRS TAXPRO-MAX, the truly fully end-to-end tax administration solution for companies' income tax, value-added tax, petroleum profits tax, and all other tax types. For fast, efficient, and convenient end-to-end tax experience, log on to www.taxpromax.firs.gov.ng. TaxPro-MAX has turned things around for me. It is fast, user-friendly, and cost-effective. FIRS, making tax administration as easy as ABC.
Mrs. Ben Obi, thank you for joining us on Tax Matters.
Thank you, Amaka. Thank you very much.
Could you please give us a rundown as if you are speaking to a first-time taxpayer? How does the TAXPRO-MAX work?
Okay, first, the TAXPRO-MAX is a tax administration system that manages the end-to-end life cycle of a taxpayer, as well as the tax authority in terms of accountability. For you to use the TAXPRO-MAX, you have to first register. And for you to register, you need to download the update form and then complete it and take it to the nearest tax office, whichever tax office that's within your threshold. If you're a small taxpayer, if you're a micro taxpayer, if you're a medium taxpayer, if you're a large taxpayer. So you take it to your nearest tax office, depending on what your business turnover is, and then they will update. If it's a new registration, they will also register you. And that's the only time that you're compulsorily required to go to a tax office for now. We are hoping that we'll automate that process where you do not need to go to the tax office to submit that update form. Now, after that registration, your login details to log into the portal is given to you at that point, where you can then go online to www.firs.gov.ng and then click on the e-business, and then you see the link to TAXPRO-MAX, and then you'll be presented with a login detail where you put your username and the password, which was sent to you by email once you registered in the tax office. Then you can log in and do all the processes that you want to do, depending on what you want to do. So if you're returning your filing, if you want to pay on account, that's all done. So you can also apply for your tax clearance certificate online. If you want to view your tax account, that's your ledger, you can view to know if all the withholding credits that you had suffered when you were paid, if they had been reported to FRS and if they're actually on your account. So all of that transactions you can perform on TAXPRO-MAX portal.
Can you please highlight the achievements the TAXPRO-MAX has garnered, in tax administration and revenue generation or mobilization in Nigeria?
The first will be the taxpayer database. We now have a trusted taxpayer database with integrity. And on the second one, filing used to be done manually. And because it's manual filing, there's been a lot of mistakes that you cannot manually determine as against when you have a system checking. So today, filing of returns is being done on the TAXPRO-MAX portal electronically, and then you can also pay electronically using different channels, which has helped us. One of the issues we also had in the past was reconciliation, being able to match all assessments with the payments to ensure that assessments, the correct payments were paid. Today, you can then do that. So if you're supposed to pay 1 naira and 001 kobo, that's what you pay. You can't pay less, you can't pay more. If you take instrumental payments, you can. Now, instrumental payments is not left. If you're filing within the time frame that you're supposed to, within the due date you're supposed to file, it automatically allows you to choose whether you want to do instrumental payment. It's no longer being negotiated. The logic has been built into the system. Now, it also has blocked leakages in the sense that penalties and interest are now automatically calculated. And then, and that has made a lot of taxpayers comply. So it's also driving, as much as it's increasing collection, is also driving compliance. It's also giving taxpayers some convenience with regards with withholding credit notes. If you recall, in the past, you did a job for, let's say, one of the MDAs, and they pay you and withhold your withholding tax. You have to go back to that agency, to that MDA, to pick up your withholding credit notes. You can then take the same thing manual to the tax office when you're filing your returns and use parts of the credit note to offset your liability. But now it's all automatically done, and that's the convenience I'm talking about, the ease of filing your returns. So you can decide to use your credit. Once you have credit on your ledger, you can decide to use it when you're filing, and then whatever the balance is, you can then pay in cash, and you can pay in the bank right away, not that you have to go to physical bank. You go to a physical bank is now your choice if you don't want to pay online. So those are many more are what TAXPRO-MAX has been able to achieve for FRS and for the country.
Okay, so TAXPRO-MAX has made it easy to fulfill tax obligations. But then, wetin government they do with all the money wey them they collect sef? A lot, yes, a lot. It is common knowledge that in the last 6-7 years, the country has undergone transformational infrastructural development. Recently, we went on a tour of Abuja, the federal capital city, and we were amazed at what we saw. For an already existing city, well developed and admired by all and sundry, we were amazed that the capital city still looked very much like a construction site. Let's share with you a few of what we saw in Abuja. At Wusewan and Garki, we saw ongoing resurfacing of existing roads and renewal works with a bridge that is going to connect Wuye to Zone 7. At the central area, there is another bridge under construction to address traffic congestion in that axis. At Area 11, there is a massive road rehabilitation ongoing. Of course, we cannot but keep talking about the revolution in railway transportation. Lagos to Ibadan, Abuja to Kaduna, Etape to Warri. By the NNPC headquarters in the Central Business District, we saw the Abuja Metro Line terminus. And of course, the FRS is putting up a state-of-the-art gigantic edifice at its new headquarters. We can go earn and earn, but the simple conclusion is that taxpayers' money is really working. Let us all resolve to do our duty to Nigeria. Pay due taxes at the right time. Nigeria, now we all know. See you next week.